Hey, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Good to have you here, as always. So tonight, I am digging deeper into the minds of racist skinheads. Yeah, going to be talking about the psychology, what makes them tick, and how it all kind of works. So yeah, buckle up. This is going to be a good one. So grab yourself your Pepsi. Of course, you could have Pepsi or your popcorn or your soda or your coffee or whatever. And hey, if you want to buy me a Pepsi and support me, be much appreciated. All the links are in the description below. But let's get into it. Let's talk about the skinhead mind. So have you ever wondered what's really behind those tough exterior of the skinheads? Like the skinhead, like what comes to mind when you hear that word, especially when it has the term racist in front of it? The racist skinheads, you think, oh, okay, they just like these hardened white men hating on everyone who's not like them, like all that anger and violence and, yeah, projecting that out onto the world. Or maybe even like a modern Viking berserker defending his tribe, defending the honor of his people. And if that's the case, then they must be solid, like really hard dudes, they've got their shit together, both physically and mentally, right? Well, for most, no. I mean, for many of them, physically, yes. Mentally, oh, no, no. That's couldn't be further from the truth. Especially from my time with skinheads and as a hammerskin, who were the strongest, were the elite, were the pinnacle of racist skinheads. Yeah, I found it to be a little bit different when it came to their minds, their mindset, and even their mental health. Just something we just don't talk about. So most of the skinheads that I knew, they saw themselves as these white warriors, defenders of the faith, defenders of the white race, and, fighting against Zog and all these other unseen enemies, enemies of the mind for a lot of them. And that required a lot of mental strength, right? So how did they do it? And why? Why did they need to do it? Why did they feel that way? Well, that's going really into the psychology of it, but you have to understand why a lot of these guys actually end up in these movements, even why I did. And it's because of a lot of trauma, a lot of mental anguish, or just problems growing up. It's really well known, especially these days. That's what drives a lot of people into these movements. It did for me. I needed a sense of belonging, I felt like with a connection to a brotherhood, it would lessen my issues, it would help me to, find some peace or stability in my mind, get rid of all this madness and the craziness, And so after a while, I started to realize that most of these guys don't deal with these issues whatsoever. I thought, okay, maybe there's like group therapy sessions. We're going to sit around in a circle and share our problems.
Kumbaya. Wait, I know it. Kumbaya. Kumbaya. Wait, I know it. Kumbaya.
But no, definitely not. But then even just talking to brothers, that's what that brotherhood's there for. We can talk about our problems, right? Talk about what's bothering us. No, definitely not. Couldn't do that either. You'd be seen as weak. Fucking emotions. We're all alpha males around here. Emotions are a weakness. So fuck your emotions and just suck it up. And if you can't, then here's the ways that you can deal with it. The most obvious coping method is to release that anger, aggression, the anguish, whatever, usually through hating others. Yeah, the whole racism side of things is like, oh, I'm going to project my hatred onto this group. I've got a target now. Yeah, cool. And then eventually, that can also turn to violence, which for them is another release. But then the biggest coping tool I actually saw in that movement in all my years was substances, mostly alcohol. Yep. You ever wonder why you see all these skinheads, and, drunk all the time and, partying and drinking with their mates? It's because that is the most commonly accepted coping tool, in a sense. even though you're not really coping. Alcohol just kind of, blurs things over. But of all the Hammerskins and a lot of the skinheads that I knew, they're all alcoholics. It was all accepted, you just drink away your problems. But the biggest problem with that is, the problems don't go away. You're not really coping with it. And that became really apparent at our events, our gigs, our get togethers, our meet and greets, and our parties.
Any parties happening in this shitty town?
Calling on the boots and straightening up the laces, shaving our heads and strapping on the braces. Now you are a skinhead looking for...
Everyone would drink themselves into a stupor, and you can guarantee at the end of the night, someone's having an argument, someone's having a fight, and it's always over past issues. That past is coming up and it's coming out. They're all so drunk they don't even realize it. They don't even remember the next day. They remember they had a blue, because normally they got, black eyes or someone's got a broken tooth or whatever. Yeah, again, those coping tools weren't really coping. And then there were substances. There were actually some who used substances like drugs and stuff like that. Now, the Hammerskins and, for the most part, the Australian movement were anti-drug. The Hammerskins had a zero-drug policy, which, for the most part, most people adhered to. But then one of the other substances that I realized people were using legally were antidepressants. Large majority of these guys were on antidepressants. It took me a long time to learn that they were, because they didn't talk about it. Like, you don't talk about it. We're on them. You don't talk about why we're on them. Oh, no. And keep drinking. Yeah, definitely keep drinking, right? Because the antidepressants are only just, helping a little bit. It was pretty vicious for a lot of it. Now, for me, I didn't drink alcohol. I didn't touch it. The whole time I was with that movement, I wasn't drinking before then. I used to party a lot with drugs and everything like that. That was one of my earlier coping mechanisms when I was, hanging around with the MC. And I like to party. But, being a Hammerskin, no drugs for me. So how did I cope with a lot of these issues that were always coming up, never really discussed? Well, for me, my coping mechanism was woman. Being with multiple women and, chasing them and all that.
Come back here, you! Giggity, giggity, crabbity, giggity.
Kind of stuff. It was a bit of a distraction from, my daily fucking mental gymnastics that I was going through. It wasn't a release. And here's the thing. I and many of us had these coping tools, to deal with a lot of the shit that was going on in our heads, but not realizing that the movements and everything we're doing was really making things worse. It was attributing to our mental health more than anything. But we weren't aware of it, because we're like, well, we're part of this movement and this movement's great and we're doing great things and we're warriors and blah, 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 whilst ignoring the real issues of what led us there in the first place, most of us weren't even aware. None of us were like, oh, I had childhood trauma, so fuck it, I'm going to become a Nazi skinhead and drink, piss, and smash people. Yeah, no, we didn't realize that at all. So after a lot of years of this, with the madness and the craziness, and even my mental health getting, worsening, I started distancing myself from the movement. And I started, hanging out with one of the ex-Hammerskins. Now, I actually prospected under him. He left about 6 months into my prospect period. But then later on, he started, hanging out with me, and he'd come to my place. Big part of the reason why he left is because he wanted to smoke weed. Weed helped him. It calmed him. He'd spent a lot of years doing a lot of damage to himself and to others. He was a very violent person. He was crazy. He was seen as the crazy one.
This guy is crazy. Who's that crazy guy? A crazy mate? I'm to see them with racial hatred.
And he'd had enough. He knew he needed to start working on it and healing. And we talked a lot about it. And he was the one who actually talked a lot about antidepressants and stuff like that. But it made me realize that the answers that I was seeking, ways to deal with my mental health, wasn't with this movement at all. So I got out. And then, a couple of years later, I started working on it. And, here I am now. Still working on it, still healing, but on the right path. But I also have coping tools that benefit me now. I don't have to turn to hating anyone. I don't have to turn to violence. I don't have to, drink or take substances, At the end of all that, after 8 years, it did a lot of damage to me. It did a lot of damage to my life. It did a lot of damage to my friends and family. But now, I see myself as a good person, who can actually help people. And I have helped people, and that for me is really a sense of pride, from those achievements, from what I have done now. That is something to be proud of. And that's something that those movements can never, ever truly give you. At the end, I ask, can we look past the hatred and see the person within? Because there is a person there, and it's a person who needs something in life and he needs help, and that's all he's looking for at the end of the day. And hey, feel free to share your stories, ask and seek for help if you actually need it. I am here to encourage conversations that go deeper than the surface, and together we can break down the walls of misunderstanding and see the humanity in each other. And I know for many it is uncomfortable to listen to this, to even talk about, their mental health, their issues, or what's bothering them. I know it's difficult, but it's important. It's important that we do, and it's important that those stigmas have to change, especially for us men. And it is Mental Health Awareness Week starting tomorrow in New Zealand. And just know we can get through everything in life if we do it together. And that's the theme of Mental Health Awareness Week this year, is top up together. So reach out, talk to someone. If you see someone in need, help them out. That's what it's all about. And that's what's going to make the world a better place, because we can do it. But thank you so much for listening in. I really appreciate you being here for this one. And hey, if you want to keep seeing new videos like this, I do a lot of different, videos about skinheads and racist skinhead movements and mental health and all that kind of good stuff. But all you're going to do is like this video, subscribe down below, and hit the little bell to get notified. You'll be seeing new videos from every week. And if you'd like to support me and support this channel, this tiny little channel, there's many different ways you can do it. You can buy me a Pepsi. Even one-off PayPal donations are greatly appreciated. It goes towards my cost of living. And you can buy my merchandise in the store. I have Patreon, Discord, and memberships. Yeah, memberships on this channel are only 99 cents a month. That's fantastic. And you get a lot of perks like members-only videos and members-only live streams. Yeah, so check it all out. I've got it all for you. And hey, if you ever need to talk, I'm here for that too. Always. Thank you so much. Ngā mihi, aroha nui, and peace out. Love and light to you.